Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It is Saturday morning, March 18th already. Uh, Saturday and beautiful morning starting off. I hope and trust you had a good week. And we'll do as we normally do and start with questions. Any questions? It may help if on our last session on Monday, uh, we were kind of feeding from Isaiah 58, where it talked about the heritage of Jacob. And we were tying that in because we had spent so much time talking about ancestors. And the picture of ancestors is a lot broader than we had included. And we were looking at it uh, from the pursuit of truth, even looking at the journey of Abraham, Isaac, and Pastor did a beautiful job of tying all that together. Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, and then Jacob and his family. So how all of that one kind of feeds and brings another one, uh, sets the foundation for the next part of man in his search for truth. And so that being the heritage of Jacob, that being our ancestors, and something that we can readily see and connect to. Uh, and that was pretty much the conversation on Monday night. So, but are there any other questions, anything that may have grabbed your attention this week, or anything about anything in the scriptures? Okay. Um, let's see. I want to say this because there were a couple of things I was going to bring up that I saw in the news, and we talk about a lot of stuff that we see. Uh, you've heard me talk about this documentary that you can pull up on YouTube that I think is beautiful. Uh, it's a documentary about some elephants. There was a part in the country in Africa, and I don't remember where they had overpopulation of elephants. So they took some of the juvenile elephants, the male juveniles, and moved them to a different country, a different region, and they got there and just sort of wreaked havoc. They start exploring villages and coming in, destroying property and killing other animals, whether livestock or out in the jungle. They were guarding a water hose and wouldn't let animals come and drink. They just acting like hoodlums, if you would, young thuggish elephants. And the wardens, game wardens, tried everything they could think of, kind of thinning them out, or whatever they could think of to curb the behavior, and it never happened. And uh, they thought about euthanizing them, just hey, we've tried this, it didn't work. Let's just, but someone had the idea before we do that. Let's bring in some males. Let's bring in some mature bull elephants, and they did, and the behavior stopped almost overnight. Behavior curbed, and they started behaving in the same manner as the bull elephants. And we look at that, and I think about the things I see. I mean, you can't pick up the paper anymore about the violence, the shootings, the killings, the whether or not it's domestic, whether or not it's the police. We see the violence over in the things going over in France. We see what's going on in Europe, and the alliance that China has now with the Soviet Union. We see all of these things, but we be the bull elephants. The earth, in a spiritual way, is very juvenile, and someone has to bring order to it. So it looks like an impossible task, and it looks like the only way to combat it is through force, but that is not the case. Uh, we be the bull elephants. We be the order. We be the balance that is needed. So just keep the course. I know we see a lot of stuff out there and it looks overwhelming, but we are not overwhelmed. Okay? Thank you. Questions? Okay. Um, I want to return to something in Genesis again, unless someone has something else they want to discuss. Uh, something I want to see here. Okay. Look at chapter 12 with me in Genesis, please. Look at chapter 12. Let me see where I want to start here. We've gone over this several times. It's just a part of this I want to bring out, and I want to kind of talk about it and see if this makes sense. Okay. As part of this, I saw something here, but I don't quite see what it means spiritually. And I'd like to look at this. Okay, I'm starting at verse 14, y'all, and I'm going to read probably through 19. And it came about when Abram went into Egypt, and the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful, and Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Therefore he treated Abram well for her sake, and gave him sheep and oxen and donkeys, and male and female servants, and female donkeys and camels. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues, and because of Sarah, Abram's wife. Then Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? And why do you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." The part of this nobody talks about is that Pharaoh slept with Sarah. The church wants to gloss over this and pretend that that did not happen. But if you read well some other documentation, some other Hebrew documents out there, and you hear it clearly says in verse 19, he took her as his wife. He had intercourse with Sarah. Uh, and that's the part I want to talk about a little bit, gain some insight to it. I see there's a parallel here, and I see this as almost the same parallel as the African woman went through. Sarah protects her masculinity. The African woman protected her masculinity. So from there, I have 1,000 questions. Uh, what do you guys see in this? And what do you make of it?
Good morning, everyone. One of the things that stand out to me in that story is Abram did tell the hierarchy of Egypt that that was his sister. And from a historical aspect, in that era, people did marry their sister. So he could have been telling the truth, or he may not have been telling the truth. Yet, when the Pharaoh addressed Abram, he was concerned of, why didn't you tell me this was your wife? If you would have told me this was your wife, I would have never got down with her. I would have never wooed her or approached her. That that to me is has always been an interesting part, because it almost sounds like the the Pharaoh is repenting of, man, if I'd have known this was your wife, I wouldn't have walked down this road with her. In my reading of it, I never took the Pharaoh as being arrogant. Like, okay, that's your wife, so what? Don't matter, I'm Pharaoh. But that's just what I gather from it. Of it almost sounds like the Pharaoh is apologizing, so it has to be some kind of conduit between Abram and the Pharaoh. They worship the same God. Do they share the same language? Or maybe they know each other. I don't know, but it just sounds like to me the Egyptian is apologizing for the act. Thank you.
Thank you, George. You do bring up some interesting points. Yes, she was. She is indeed his sister, and the interesting thing about this is this sort of this similar episode happened to Abraham again. This happens to Abraham. Next one happens to Abraham, and there's a spiritual significance there. This also happens to Isaac and Rebekah. So, in looking at this, this is very spiritual part of it. Anyway, I see based on what you're saying. The part that I see is this was necessary for Abram. This was necessary for Sarah. The thing is, he recognizes that this is his balance. He recognizes that this is his covering. And it is through this coupling that you see right here that this happens again when his name has been changed, when the hay has been added, when the breath has been added. But in the second case, she does not need to. She does not have to sleep with Amalek in that particular case. So this is a spiritual thing. They did not serve the same gods at all, but this happens so that Abram can see who he is. So Abram can recognize and appreciate his femininity and the protection he had. This is her protecting him. This is her hedging him in and protecting him. So that's but they shared the same father. So yes, that was indeed his sister.
Ron,
Yes, sir.
if I may add a historic, if I may add a little historic perspective to that.
Yes, sir.
You were reading from the Chumash, or speaking from the Chumash, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, of the Old Testament, rather. During the era of Abraham, when this story, this allegory, was repeated, during that period of time that it was being repeated, the Pharaoh who sat on the throne was not Egyptian or Cushite at that period of time. It was either European or Arabic, and that in itself during that period of time would have been one and the same pretty much. So there was a different Pharaoh, a different person sitting in that position than what had sat in that position for, I think, 10 dynasties. What does that mean to me in terms of Sarah? And the Pharaoh was, it says that Pharaoh was approached by the Lord, or had a vision, or a dream, whatever it was. But that's when he said, "This is why you didn't tell me this was your sister." Based on the timing in that, it is my contention that the reason he said, "Why you didn't tell me this was your wife instead of your sister," was not because it would have mattered, but it was because of what happened to him when he took her to be his wife. Can you see that?
Yes, sir. I do see that. Is this clear, y'all? Is anybody? Yes, no?
In the Chumash, in the first 5 books of the Bible, the understanding from the original text is not what we have read and been taught in the translation of the translation by King James and others. This, based upon the Hebrew writings, says this for a reason, that he slept with Sarah or he took her as his wife simply means that he had intercourse with her. Is what the Chumash is saying. Why? Because the consummation of being a wife is through intercourse. That's how it's consummated. Excuse me. Now, what are the spiritual indicators here? If we look at this from the Hebraic understanding of the law, what we see when we look at it through our eyes is that Sarah was defiled by Pharaoh. And if Sarah was defiled by Pharaoh, could this possibly be that the changing of her name is what brought cleansing to her? And I use cleansing very, very loosely because I don't have another word at this moment. So, are we being told that when we are on this journey, there are going to be obstacles along the way, and there will be we must understand that the feminine aspects of your being will be defiled. You have to change that. Maybe a poor example. However, what I'm seeing is that when we embrace the religions that we were taught, and we were teaching from those principles, we were birthing something. And we were birthing something that did not line up with the scriptures, which means that the spiritual womb had been defiled because it had intercourse or it was intimate with something that was antithetical or something that was not supposed to be in man's soul, and we were trying to make that be without knowing it. Could that be? So when we decided we need answers, the questions were seeds, They were spiritual seeds, and those spiritual seeds of to answer those questions came when we made a decision that we were going to travel this journey regardless of what we had to deal with. And at that point, we started on this journey. And when we were shown understandings and when materials were put in our hands from the original text, and we were beginning to see that the scriptures were talking about something totally different, meaning that the scriptures were more of an allegory than anything else. At that point, Sarah changed to Sarah, which means that the spiritual womb no longer was, there was no longer an attempt to impregnate the spiritual womb with something foreign. And the questions that we were raising were questions that actually aborted the religious principles that was in the spiritual womb. And Sarah cleansed that womb, made that womb. Well, let me back up. The womb receiving religious principles was a womb that was barren, and that is the reason that religion travels in circles. Religion travels in circles. The same thing happens over and over again. There's no new, fresh understandings of the original text. And when Sarah became Sarah, with the hay, breath, spirit being added to that name, that at that point, the spiritual womb was no longer barren, and it was able to bear seed, a son, and that's how we got Isaac, because of the hay, which is added to the name. So I'm not looking at this as a man called Abraham, a Pharaoh sitting on the throne, or Sarah being the wife of Pharaoh for a short period. I'm not seeing it from that perspective, but I am seeing the energy of it all. And I'm seeing, when you said that you felt like Sarah had engaged with Pharaoh no differently than the African woman did with the enslaver. That is the same energy. That is the same energy source. And with that being the same energy source, that's what led me to the group understanding, I guess, because I'm just seeing all of this, to where Pharaoh was making an excuse. You should have told me. I wouldn't have done this. When all the time, the reason that Abram said it is because Abram knew that Pharaoh would kill him and take his wife. Now, how does that apply to spirituality? It's simply saying that you will be castigated by those who do not understand or do not care to understand what you are teaching. No different than the evangelical or the African church. You will be castigated for that. You will be put to death in a excommunicated way, if that is a word. So am I making sense, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Thank you.
I'm curious, though, about this from a slightly different perspective. If we were to think of that masculine and feminine energy inside of ourselves and how we approach spiritual concepts, and I'm not sure I can articulate this clearly, but I'm thinking of how we can over intellectualize things, and in a way kind of sell out the side of ourselves that's more feminine.
Say that again, Janice.
I said, I'm thinking of the ways that we can over intellectualize or approach things from a very European, Western sort of dogmatic perspective, as opposed to intuition and balance and wisdom. And I'm just kind of thinking about how this story can represent that.
Oh, it represents in every way, in that the energy of the European Pharaoh on the throne and the energy of masculine and feminine energy are Abraham and Sarah, and they are leaving religion. They're walking away from it. So it's not a man and a woman walking away from it. It is us. When we look at the scriptures, we saw them from through the eye of the Europeans. That's how we were taught the scriptures, and the eye of the European and the scriptures are what is convenient and what is advantageous for the European. And being taught that way, we started raising questions about what did things mean, what certain things meant. We started raising questions about what does the original text say. And when we started raising those questions, then we were beginning a journey that was going to make our spiritual womb fertile. And we were not going to see what is written through the eyes of the European or the intellectual. We would not be intellectualizing it for the benefit of being quote unquote deep. We would be explaining as best we can what we see in these the words that were written originally in this allegory. And as a result of that, we would begin within ourselves to cleanse ourselves of all of those religious principles. And continuing the journey, we would begin to birth something. And the something that we would begin to birth would be the understanding of the wisdom of the allegory. And when we understand the wisdom, when we understand the wisdom of the allegory, we begin to have experiences with that. And our experiences with that is not only seeing more, understanding more, but our experiences with that is also the beginning of the cleansing of the spiritual womb for humanity, and that is what brings balance. Whether they understand it based upon what we are teaching or not, it doesn't matter. As long as they are searching for something, and the something that they embrace are the principles of spirituality, then that in itself will bring humanity to balance, because all those things that Ron spoke of a few moments ago that we see on the news, all of those things would be brought to a screeching halt, and we would not have to turn on the TV or pick up a paper or look on our phones and find all of these atrocities taking place around the world. Does that make sense, Janice?
Yeah, it does.
I have another perspective as well, if I may. When Janice talked about over-intellectualizing, it was as if Abraham, when he came to the border, the concept of Abram, when he got to the border, started thinking and intellectualizing, well, my wife is beautiful, blah, 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 blah. If I do this, If they know that she's my wife, things won't go well. The over intellectualizing instead of trusting what he knew and what he had been told. And so it's like Abraham jeopardized a portion of the concept of Abraham, jeopardized a portion of who it was, because it started thinking about all of these things that maybe woulda, coulda, kinda, might have happened, instead of just trusting. I mean, trusting the Elohim, the God that he knew, if that makes any sense. So he opened himself up. It said Abram went down to Egypt. And when you go down versus going up somewhere, it indicates a level of conscious dissension rather than conscious ascendance, if that resonates. But the conscious dissension was in his own intellect, or in the intellect of the concept called Abram. And when you lower yourself in that kind of intellect, things start going through your mind. Might be taken from me. I might be blah blah blah. So the lesson also to us is that when we do that, we put ourselves in the position to receive the energies of this kind of thinking as well. And so while Abraham was led by God, the concept Abraham was led by God, the concept was still had the opportunity for flawed thinking, or thinking that was not in line with who it was. I don't know if that makes sense, but I can see what Janice was talking about when she talked about the intellectualizing. For us, we can overdo it and overthink it as well, and open ourselves up to other stuff rather than what we know.
I can see that, Barbara.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, Pastor. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can see that, and that's one of the reasons it's so important that we do what we do in terms of the research, do what we do in terms of meditation, do what we do in terms of having all of us having a piece puzzle of understanding the wisdom that's in these allegories.
Barbara, it sounds like you just described Evelyn sometimes. That Evelyn feels the way she feels sometimes. I mean, you were like on point, but that was a lesson that you just taught. Thank you.
And it's not just to you, not to you, Evelyn, to us, because this is the story of us in a sense. So all of us have done this, and probably, like me, repeated times.
All of us did do it, especially when we were teaching Sunday school and having conferences, presenting in conferences and stuff, you know.
It doesn't seem to me that Abraham and Sarah made this decision together. Is that the right way to look at that? Is there any evidence that they had a conversation and arrived at that decision together, or did?
No,
They did.
Oh.
They did in verse 14. It's in verse 11. He said, just before they were about to enter, I know you're a beautiful woman. If the Egyptians see you and think she is his wife, they will kill me and let you live, blah, blah, blah. So you tell them you're my sister. In other words, they had to have that conversation of, okay, you're part of me. What are we going to do to protect? What are we going to do to quote unquote protect ourselves, or what Abel was saying, to protect me, but understanding that that feminine part of him was himself too.
If
Go ahead, Ron.
I'm going to tie in the sister and the wife, because this is what he needed. This is very, very spiritual. Sister and brother have the same root word, bane. It also has a numerical value of 2, and it means to build up, to make a house. And so when you look at this, it also talks about fortifying something. So when you look at the 2 of them, what are they building? This is spiritual. If you look at it from a perspective of a wife, this is the spiritual side, is the coupling together, the coming together as one, the vibration, the rhythm, the children that come out of, the offspring that comes out of, the protection part of it, the unity part of, the harmony part of it. So this is showing that he recognizes his total femininity and what it is, and he is surrounded by this. He says, I know that you are beautiful. I know that you are my balance. So yeah, they do come together here. It's just how it's kind of worded, kind of hard to follow a little bit. And I just want to add that. Thank you.
And I want to reiterate that we are talking spiritual us and the journey that we are on, and it speaks to the inception of that journey and how things transpired. And if you think about those of us who were deeply involved in our settings, that's a conversation we had with ourselves. Do I tell anybody this? They're going to think I'm crazy, or they're not going to allow me to be a part of this body anymore. Those kinds of things. That's how I see that conversation. But that's a conversation within, and the decision is made to just keep it to yourself. And then there comes a time when you can no longer do that, and you begin to speak about it and speak about those religious principles in different terms, and eventually others begin to pick up on what you're saying, and either they are going to embrace it, or they are going to disavow you and your quote-unquote standings in the midst of religion, or your status in the midst of religion. Thank you.
If I can add this, I like you guys hear me talk about this author, Benner, Benner. Benner talks about the true meaning of the word. He talks about Egypt meaning Matsor, Matsor, Matsowr, and that means something that is pressing in on you, something that is whether or not that be an enemy, whether it means a trouble pressing in, or straight like a canyon or something where the walls are pressing in on you. And he says that is used as a name, the Hebrew name of Egypt. But Mitzrayim is the plural of that name, and it means double pressing. It means double trouble. So what is he saying? He's saying that Egypt to us is that part that is not comfortable to you, that part that presses in on you, that part that does not allow you to gain complete comfort. So the troubles that I have are not the same trouble Pastor's going to have or Barbara's going to have. Whatever it takes to press her to bring out the olive oil out of the olive, whatever that takes. So you and as we said, the easy way out is what I hear Janice saying. We can intellectualize things and go back to what is comfortable, or we can press on. And pressing on brings you together with who you are, meaning you become one with yourself, meaning you become one with the Elohim that you are, and you see that I am gaining balance if I keep this route, stay on this journey. And so the pressing in of this is what brings you about and brings about the birth of Isaac, brings about the birth of something new, brings about the newest part of you or the next part of you. But it is very easy, as has been said, to back away from this and not follow it through. So the likeness that I see with where we are today as an African people is what Sarah did. She did to protect Abram. She did to protect him from death and her masculinity, to protect their lineage. The same thing the African woman did. She did it to protect that lineage. She did it to protect him. Even you look at that, you say, well, in one case it was rape, and in one case it was not. In both cases it was rape. Intercourse is coming together and being in harmony with those two pieces, those two parts coming together and being in rhythm, and you enjoying that spiritual dance. You enjoying the back and forth, the to and fro, the up and down, the sway of the motion. You into all of that rhythm. But if that rhythm is not present, and one is has to succumb to the desires of another, that is a forced thing, and there is no balance that can come out of that. So Egypt represents that part too, that it can be ugly. It can be ugly, but at the same time, when we get to this and we get to the other side of it, and we move to allow it to push us to see who we truly are, it turns back into beauty. It turns into balance, and it doesn't look like the same thing it did when it started, when you went into Egypt. Does that make sense, y'all?
It does.
It does.
Ron, whoever was speaking can go ahead.
No, George, you go ahead.
Thank you. One of the things that you said, Ron, that kind of stood out to me was being uncomfortable. And one of the things that I would suggest to you all, and I suggested to myself, find comfort in being uncomfortable. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's your experience with it and giving your mind some kind of interpretation of it. Just find comfort in being uncomfortable, because if this could be opinionated, if you are going to grow or learn out here, there's going to be uncomfortable situations. Um, One of the things that I applaud Monique on is we got a twin bed. And if you know anything about a twin bed is a college dormitory bed. Monique and I sleep in that bed together. I mean, for 8 hours, 7 hours. And it's uncomfortable, yet I find comfort in being uncomfortable in a twin bed. And one of the things Monique said that was kind of scary to me was, George, by us sleeping in this bed, there ain't really nothing that you and I can't do. So, my suggestion to everyone is, and to include myself, find comfort in being uncomfortable. Thank you.
George Watson.
Um,
I just want to applaud you. I appreciate that advice. I like your example there. That was beautiful to say it. I've never heard you talk that way. I like that. Thank you. I got that.
might I add another dimension? Because George hit on something that I was headed, from where I was headed too. Ron, you talked about Egypt and the way Benner described it as and we've talked about it too, a cramped space, a place that presses on you. But if we look at it also from the aspect of thousands of years ago when it was called Kemet, and that simply meant rich, and it was called the Black Land because it had rich, not because of the people per se, but because it had rich and black fertile soil. That's why the concept was going to be fed in a place of nourishment, because the rivers of the Nile would flood and would bring all of the nutrients up there, fertilize the soil, and the concept of the Egyptians were being nourished in a certain way. So Abram went down to the Black Land, and even though the motive was to eat, I don't mean to say he was not in a cramped space or wasn't pushed on or pressured, or like a grape, you gotta get the oil out. You understand who you are when you have these challenges pressing on you. That's part of our journey. But the other part of that journey is, wonder what would have happened had the concept not said, "This is my wife, this is my sister," but simply went down and let everyone know, if they were asked, that this is part of me. This is who I am. I mean you no harm. I'm bringing all of these folk down simply to eat like you are eating. So I'm wondering if he had been, George's word, comfortable in his discomfort, how that would have played out, and what lesson we would have learned from that.
I think that had it played out that way, it has played out that way several times within the spiritual confine, within our bodies, the spirituality of our being, rather. It has played out. It diminishes masculinity. It's abrogating the idea of what the seed is. It's put the seed in a place where it cannot thrive. And I don't know, of what I'm seeing is that the diminishing of the seed and what it is designed to do, or what it was created to do, is abdicating its responsibilities in the pulpit. on the deacon board without knowing it, because that seed is not producing anything. That masculinity is not producing anything. So would it be that religion is not feminine? It is masculine, and that masculinity is distracted from its real essence. And the thing that keeps that seed from dying is the overwhelming number of females in that setting, or the abundance of femininity that it takes to nourish that seed to keep it from dying, or to keep it in a place where at any moment it can recognize its essence and become one with femininity. And that's the point when both the names are changed. That makes sense? Gene?
Yeah, and as you were talking, I said the concept of Abram again. Not, it was a journey of introspection, and when you start on a journey, you don't get there overnight. You don't get there generally the second you decide you want to be there, and this is part of its finding out who it was too, and so it diminished its femininity, the feminine part of itself, when it says, "Say you're my sister," because if you're my wife, that means we're closer, we have intercourse together. You know me and I know you. So by diminishing that and calling that part of itself my sister, I see that's what you were talking about. That's what the church and religion does now. It diminishes rather than saying we are all in this together, we are one, that kind of thing.
Where are we? Okay, I'm sorry, Pastor.
No, I just agree with Bob. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask the question, where are we now with this as far as that portion of it? If you look today, we've said this several times in the past, everything is being uncovered. In order for truth to reign and to be recognized, everything that is not true has to be uncovered, or even those things that are good or evil, true or not true, everything is uncovered, and you see what is true being exalted, or will see it as it becomes separated from that stuff that is not true. What am I saying? In each and every one of us, it has to be revealed to us that our femininity is inclusive of your sister and your wife, for lack of a better term. In other words, your femininity has dual roles in each of us in order to bring that balance about. So that part is revealed, so that when we look at these journeys that we take, it is not always easy. It is not always pleasant. It may be at times be dutiful. It may be at times when you even in disagreement with self, but it is you trusting who you are and pulling all that together in those difficult times, or in those times that may not be difficult. You're just trying to work through something. But all of that is a necessary part of us so that we can see who we are. And so this, like any other part of this that we have studied, has to be revealed, and it has that purpose as well.
I see that. So this whole portion of this allegory is all about recognizing where you are. And you cannot recognize where you are unless you desire to. And because even Abram was led by God to go into Egypt, what does that mean? Does it mean it was led by God external? No. The essence of our being, with which we, excuse me one second. The essence of our being that was created within us is what caused us to raise these questions. So could it possibly be that when it says that God told or God led, could it possibly be the essence of Elohim raises his head and gives us opportunity to raise the questions, or opportunity to desire more, or opportunity to see more than what we are shown, and we can reject it or not, we can reject it or embrace it. That's our choice. And the allegory says that when you embrace it, you have to first recognize that you are a being who is religious, and religion, your religion is a earthly thing. When you recognize that something is not there, that you're looking for, or something is missing, that's when the search starts. And what you realize is that this is supposed to be the spiritual thing is something you're supposed to be intimate with. The spiritual femininity is something that the masculinity is supposed to be intimate with, and it takes a Pharaoh to bring us to our senses or to make us see. It takes an incident in our lives of questioning everything and being pushed by internal questions, or being pushed by someone with whom you're speaking to actually search for more. And searching for more is that intimacy that we keep referring to between masculine and feminine energy. And that's what brings us to this place where we are in terms of the journey. Because think about going down, as Barbara said, it was a journey, going down to find out who you are, to see clearly who you are, and coming up out of Egypt, coming up from that rough place that you are peeing into. It is a journey also. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
It does make sense. A great observation there. And as you guys said, he was journeying towards Canaan. He makes this trip on his own. He descends down. And I think it was divinely inspired, but it just goes to show you the coincidences that we think our lives move in are not coincidences at all. There are truths to be unfolded. There are things to be revealed to us. If we trust who we are, then we make no mistakes. If we see who we desire to be, and we hold on to that, to what did Nick say years ago, set your intent. If we set that intent, then you just live your life. So that's where we are with that. That's a good observation, though. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a question. If you will, help me understand. So when we're vibrating, we're in a certain dimension, but the moment we start having unripened thoughts, we descend from that place. Let me say it again. When we're vibrating, we are ascending. But the moment we started having these unripened thoughts to come to us, and if we act upon it, we start descending, which we call
There's
a fall.
vibration. There's vibration at every level, Evelyn. Even rocks, even inanimate objects have a vibration that it gives off. What I believe you are saying is that when you're vibrating at a higher resonance, the moment you start descending, is the vibrations get grosser. It's like, if you know what a bass sounds like, when you play a bass, that real low key, as opposed to the high key on the bass. The real low key is it's the, for lack of a better example, it's the physical, if you will. But then when you start getting into those higher keys, and it just lifts you up, the vibration and the resonance is much higher. So there's vibration all along. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
When you talk about the unrighteous thoughts, the question becomes, what is righteousness to you? Because what we
I
have
said unripened.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
I said unripened. That's okay.
Most of my life, especially work life anyway, I have had some. Most of them have not been. Most of it has not been blue collar type work we consider blue collar work, and I walked away from that, not intentionally so much, but I end up seeing the blessing in it, and and what that was I was not pulled in different directions. I was able to do what we are doing right now, and do it with comfort, and have plenty of time to do it, and not, be on the job many hours than I normally would be if I wasn't. And that was stressful to me. However, one of the things I have been talking to myself about is I'm at a place now where, what I do is not very hard, but you're on your feet a lot, and you are lifting something. So my body is starting to get tired, and I'm looking at, okay, what else do you want to do? What's the next step here for you? And so one of the managers come to me and ask me about a leadership position, and for a split second that sounded intriguing, and I said, I'll give that some thought, and but almost immediately I knew that that's the world I left, and I was not comfortable there either. That's not what I want to do. That takes me time away from who I want to be. Probably a couple hours later, in the same day, someone comes to me and starts talking to me about some marital problems, right? Some personal stuff. and I drop everything and I listen and we talk and we talk. And I think this is where I'm comfortable. This is what I like. Even though some of the things that I was told kind of hurt me for them, that is what my life is. Uh, and whether I call one of you guys or uh, pray for wisdom as I'm talking to these people or not, that's where I like being. And the other one, seems as though it takes me out of the cramped space. It takes me out of the uncomfortableness that my body gets in sometimes. It is not the solution. So what am I saying? I'm saying that whether we see it or not, we are always in situations that put us in pressing positions. And there are things that come about that seem right, that seem like the direction to go, that may not be the direction to go. And so this is something that doesn't happen once; it happens continuously, and it is can be further complicated based on some of the decisions we make. So as I saw that, I think the young person coming to me about some personal information helped me to focus again and see who and what my life is, as far as what truly brings me comfort, and not just getting out of a situation that will make my body feel better. And that may be a poor example, but what I'm trying to say is we are constantly in and out of this world, and there are things that press in on us to help us to see who we are, and that's not going to change. Hope that made sense.
It did.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? Okay. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. It's a little after 11. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. And thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.